tour by himself.
I'd like to call the meeting to order for Monday, February 10th, for the regular meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals at 7 o'clock. If everyone could just stand and face the flag, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can we have roll call, please?
Board Member Allen?
Here.
Board Member Butts? Board Member Gesund?
Here.
Alternate Hatchett?
Here.
Board Member Krug?
Here.
Board Member McAlpine?
Here.
Board Member Euler? Alternate Ward?
Here.
Chair Evans?
I'd just like to record for our minutes that Mr. Butts, Mr. Evans, and Mr. Euler are, Mr. Butts and Mr. Evans, I believe, are out of town, and Mr. Euler has some childcare issues, so they are not present, and either is Councilman Hennon tonight because he is attending the Tree Board meeting as well. So right now, we do not have a full board sitting, and I believe it's the petitioner's option to request a table, or because we don't have 7, is that true?
No, we can still move forward.
Oh, right, we can, but
Yeah.
but she would have the option, is that not right?
Yep, she
Okay,
could.
so, I mean, it's up to you. I think we can all make a good decision, so given that, I will move forward with approval of the agenda. Everyone should have a copy of the agenda here, and I believe it covers everything that we need to discuss tonight.
I'd like to move to approve the agenda as written. Support.
Gesund?
Yes.
Hatchett?
Yes.
Krug?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Allen?
Yes.
McAlpine?
Yes. Next up on our agenda is reviewing and approval of the minutes from our meeting on Monday, January 13th. They were all included in our packet, and at this point, we will either entertain a motion or request for revisions, additions, if there are some, or any at this point.
I'd like to move. Oh, go ahead.
I'll move to accept the minutes of the January 13th meeting as written.
Second.
Thank you.
Hatchett?
Yes.
Krug?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Allen?
Yes.
Gesund?
Yes.
McAlpine?
Yes. So next up on our agenda is application PBA 01-20. It is a request for dimensional variance at 2074 Columbia, parcel 25-17-378-021. The request is to construct a 1,040 square foot single-family residence with a basement. The minimum required floor area for a single-family residence in the R1D district is 1,300 square feet with a basement. So if you could provide us the background, please.
Yes, the subject property located at 2074 Columbia is zoned R1D, the single-family residential district. It is located entirely within a residential neighborhood. Properties to the north, south, east, and west are all located in the R1D single-family district. The Schedule of Regulations notes that the requirement for a single-family residential structure in the R1D district is 1,300 square feet with a basement. Without a basement, it would be 1,500 square feet. The existing family dwelling on the subject site is considered to be a legal non-conforming structure, as the primary structure is less than the required 1,300 square feet, according to Oakland County records. Based on the neighborhood and the layout, most of the structures, the principal dwelling structures in that general area are legal non-conforming. They were built prior to the adoption of the ordinance. The primary building at the subject site was built in 1945 according to Oakland County records, so certainly before the ordinance was adopted. The applicant has noted that they are proposing to demolish the existing structure on this building, or on this property, and build a new single-family dwelling. In order for that to move forward as presented, they would need the variance from the size of the principal dwelling as presented. The applicant has noted that all other setback requirements, height, lot coverage, and minimum distance from the adjacent dwellings will be complied with as the zoning ordinance is currently written.
Okay, so I assume you're the petitioner. If you'd like to come forward and just for the record, give us your name and address, and then tell us a little bit about what your request is, please.
My name is Pamela Stasko. My address is 2074 Columbia. This has been my primary residence since I purchased the property in 1992. I'm here today to request a variance from the minimum square footage of 1,300 square feet to build a new residence on this property, and this would continue to be my primary residence. As Aaron noted, the building was originally constructed in 1945, so it's about 75 years old. And some of the reasons particular to this building that I would like to take the existing building down and rebuild, one is that the back wall, which is a structural wall, has a slight bow in it. It has not gotten worse since the time I have owned the property, but it's not going to get better by itself. Also, sometime, I suspect in about the 1970s, someone added a hose bib at the back of the house, and to get the pipe from the front of the house where the water comes in to the back of the house, they notched the bottom of every single joist on the west side of the house. So these things in and of themselves can be repaired, but it's reasonably costly to do that, and then I would be left with the remainder of a house that's 75 years old. Constructing a new home will also allow me to raise the level of the basement floor. That, together with a back check valve in the sanitary sewer line leading out of the house, will reduce the chances of flooding in the basement, and you all understand why that's an issue.
Yes, indeed.
It would also allow me to construct a new stair that is less steep than the existing one. The existing stair was built at a time when steeper stairs to the basement were allowed. So I would like to be able to have that be a little more comfortable travel up and down the stair to the basement. In my existing property and the adjacent properties, I am the third house east of Henley. So for starting at Henley, the row of 6 houses, which mine is a part of, all of those are single-story residences. The houses in the middle of that string all receive eastern sunlight in the morning, direct, because they're all single-story houses, and western sunlight in the afternoon. Given the close spacing of the houses, if I were to construct a 2-story home on this property, it would block out the eastern sun from my western neighbor and block out the western sun from my eastern neighbor. So I am proposing to construct a new home that is consistent with the style and the scale of the existing houses along that row. Thank you.
I'm going to open it up to the commissioners to see if anyone has any questions for the petitioner. Okay. If there are none, I will close that portion, and seeing as there's no one in the audience, we'll go ahead and move forward for discussion on this matter.
Yeah.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. First of all, I'd like to go on record as saying the 1,300 square foot minimum that was imposed in this area and several others really isn't, I don't know, I think it's counterproductive personally to the city of Berkeley. I would be heartbroken if I had a house that required a 1,300 square foot minimum and it burned to the ground and I couldn't rebuild it as is without coming to the Zoning Board of Appeals to do so. I don't know, 68% of the houses in this town, approximately, give or take a few percentage points, are 1,100 square feet or less. And that's a little troublesome to me. I drove by the subject property. The only thing that I noticed that was different than what I'm used to looking at is the depth of the backyard. It's very, very shallow compared to a lot of them. And I was doing some figuring on the plans that we got. And if you go to the outside dashed lines all the way around the subject property, you'd have to build to those lines with no projections sticking out to hit 1,300 square feet. And that's a little troublesome. I think that's all I have for now.
Mr. Coop?
Well, I think one problem they were having also is that the other homes on the block are set farther, instead of a 25-foot setback, yours and the others are at 35. So that's why you can't bring it forward, to make your 1,300 square feet, because she'd be encroaching on that.
And the structural problems in the house, having been built in 1942, could be construed, at least I'm, as a practical difficulty
Yes.
in enjoyment of the home, and restricting this and not allowing her to rebuild could be considered.
Right. And I think that the allowing this one variance also allows her to continue to comply with all other requirements. This is just one piece of the puzzle. The rest of the requirements are being met. So I think that that's important to note as well.
And also, I think that's important because if we look at one of our 5 criteria, and just for the record, we have 5 criteria that we need to meet. It is not a gray, do they meet or not? It is purely black and white. So if I can add on to that comment as well, this would be considered the least amount of variance that we would have to give to the property owner as well, which then also satisfies the request that the minimum variance necessary be granted for the applicant as well. So are there any other questions or comments? At this point, then, we can entertain a motion if we're ready.
Well, I just had one more comment.
Sure.
One of the things that are really picking up steam across the country for folks that want to age in place are tiny houses. And whether they're done in a development or as a standalone issue, I don't think it's something that we should walk away from, because if it allows someone to stay in a home as opposed to move to an apartment complex with seniors, it's something that we need to keep in our tool belt.
And I would add to that, and please don't take this any bit personally, but if you talk about the stairs and we talk about how we want people to stay, it needs to be easy to maneuver whether you're young or old. So I think that that's another thing that we can consider in that small footprint. That is a positive at this point. So are there any other comments? Okay, then as we know, we need to, someone needs to make a motion, and then we just need to make sure that we address the points that we need to in order to comply with our job here as Zoning Board of Appeals people, members, whatever we are. Cheers. Go ahead.
I'll move that we grant the variance to Pamela Stasko at 2074 for the following reasons. One, that the minimum setback from the front street is 25 feet, which is the same as her abutting neighbors, and to, if she was to require the 1,300 feet or comply with the 1,300 feet, that she would violate or, in essence, change the character of the neighborhood. Secondly, I believe that the 1,300-foot requirement for an existing property is a hardship on the property owner, and that based upon looking at the plans, that the lot would be overbuilt if she were to build to the side variances. And third, from a practical standpoint, the house has some building issues, i.e. the basement wall is buckled. We all know that Berkley properties have a tendency to flood, and that she would need, and she needs some type of a backflow valve tied into the sanitary sewer. And for those reasons, I move that we grant the variance.
Support.
I think I covered everything.
Krug,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Gesund,
Yes.
Hanchett,
Yes.
McAlpine.
Yes, Ms. Dasko, your variance has been approved, and I think this is the first time I've ever seen someone coming in asking for less. Is that, so welcome, thank you for being creative and thinking, and I think it hopefully will set a trend for others who may want to follow suit as well, so.
Very good.
Good luck.
Congratulations.
Okay.
Chair?
Yes.
I'd like to also make a motion at this point that we begin discussions with the Planning Commission, looking at this ordinance and seeing if there isn't a better way of handling it.
I think that's a good idea as well.
I'll support that motion.
Is that something that too, as they're doing the master plan, is going to come through?
Yes, that's something we'll be looking at in depth when we work through the master plan, but it's something that we can, city administration staff can start looking at in a more comprehensive way, as opposed to in terms of, do we want to start talking about small housing, the tiny houses, and incorporate that into the master plan for aging in place? So it'll all kind of come together.
Very good, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, next up on the agenda is the election of officers, and there's a note in our packet here that it is determined that we have elections in January and July, and just for whatever reason, we didn't do that last month, so that is on our agenda for tonight. So I think it is appropriate for me to resign as vice chair, and I'll stay on if that is what is decided. And then obviously, I believe that's Mr. Evans' desire as well, although he is not here, so.
Would everybody feel more comfortable having the full board here and doing this?
Yes.
There's really no press for time here.
Yeah, I mean, I wondered the same thing, considering that we have, we're missing some people that serve as commissioners, so.
Yep.
If that's fine, then we'll just move that to the March meeting, if we have a March meeting.
Yes.
And if not, we will move it to the next
April.
meeting. Okay, thank you, Mr. Allen.
You're welcome.
Next up is discussion, and it's our annual discussion regarding the rules and procedures. That as well was included in our packet. They were last updated in September 2019. If everyone has had a chance to review those, we can take comments, and then I would wonder too if this is not something, if it is not necessary, that we may move to our next meeting as well, given that we are missing some folks.
We worked on this a good long time,
time, yes.
and it wasn't that long ago that it was finished, and it was a pretty good document. when
I
we
agree.
finished it.
I think if we have any corrections, we can do that now and then have the finished document at the next meeting.
Yep.
Yeah, we worked on this at great length and made some, I think, pretty important revisions.
One thing I would ask is, I know we all attended training. Should we be adding something in here, or is it fine that we need to supply to you proof of training, even given that we were all at that last training session together, just for tracking purposes?
You don't necessarily need to provide anything for that particular training. I bore witness to everyone who was there.
Yeah,
Except Mr. Allen, who left early. And,
That's right.
Oh, shame.
But no, and if there were any outside trainings that you went to that, I wasn't, or someone from the city staff wasn't there to confirm, then yes, we would need some kind of documentation.
So it does say here, hours of training shall be tracked and documented. So as long as, I would just keep that in mind if you should attend something that we're not all part of as a group, that you make sure that we just provide that documentation to Erin.
Is the list of who's met the requirement for training available on the city website?
No, it is not.
That'd be a bad idea.
Madam Chair.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm not used to being called that.
I just wanted to add, I have been doing municipal work for many years, more than I wish to admit to. And I have to say, I thought the training at Oakland County was outstanding. I thought the presenter really knew his material, was very familiar with the material, and I learned something. I was very impressed with the presentation. So I'd like to thank the city of Berkeley and for staff bringing this to our attention. I thought it was excellent.
Any other comments regarding the training?
It was good. All the training sessions that are offered through the county are generally really, really well done. That's the second one for me going to, and I wouldn't hesitate to go to another.
Okay, next up on our agenda is other business. I don't know if there's any other business that we need to address tonight.
I just have a couple of comments, things that Councilman Hennon had passed on wanted to bring to everyone's attention. So the council's work on the marijuana ordinances and rules has been completed. The ordinances have been officially adopted. The merit point system by which we will be judging these applications was adopted by resolution by the City Council at the February 3rd meeting. The applications are proposed to go live this Friday, February 14th. We will have 1 month of open application period before we start accepting them. We will be having a developers pre-app meeting March 6th here at City Hall. And that will allow applicants the opportunity to come and ask us questions that, and get the same answer from everybody kind of thing. And then the applications will be submitted. We have a 2-week open period from March 16th to March 30th. I believe those dates are correct. In which case we will receive all of them after the closing date has been passed. City staff will have 90 days to review those applications. And after those 90 days, then we will know where the marijuana businesses are going to be located within the city, and then they can start their site plan approval process. So it's very, very exciting here. Council has approved the first reading of a proposed ordinance improving communication practices around public hearings. This would pertain to this body, given that we do public hearings for variances and appeals and things of that nature. If there is a public hearing that is to be held, a temporary sign is put in place at that property. If you drove past 2074, you would have seen the temporary sign that's on that property. That is now going to become practice for every public hearing that is conducted within the city. So anything from variance requests to special land use, rezoning, anything that would require, that would pertain to a particular property, there will be a temporary sign. Those will be put up by city staff. That way we know where it is and that it was done appropriately within the given time frame. Council has also approved the first reading of a conditional rezoning of a duplex for parking at Franklin, just off of Woodward. This is to support a proposed marijuana business that would be located on Woodward Avenue. So the duplex is located just west of Woodward, the first residential property there. So the applicant is proposing to demolish that building itself and then put up a parking area to service the Woodward businesses. Finally, number 4, the DDA last year, the Planning Commission recommended approval of a design overlay district for the DDA. This also included design guidelines that would help developers and business owners with any kind of facade improvements or design proposals that they were looking for in the district. This had been tabled for a number of months at the city council level, and given that there's been significant changes in personnel here and how things have been moving forward, it is now going back to Planning Commission, where we're going to tweak and modify a little bit to make things easier for future developers. So there's a lot of fun, interesting things happening in the city.
Any comments or questions?
I actually did have a few things. Number one, I wanted to thank the Department of Public Works for their excellent work in dealing with the snowstorm over the weekend. And they've really, just driving through other neighborhoods, we really have a top-notch Department of Public Works here. Secondly, this is kind of, before I moved to Berkley, I was on a committee in Farmington Hills called the Committee to Increase Voter Participation. So putting that hat back on, I would like to remind everyone that there is a presidential primary election on March 10th. And in addition to that, there's also a ballot proposal, I believe, regarding the DIA.
Yes.
So even if you don't have a horse in the presidential primary race, regardless of party, please get out to vote for that ballot initiative for the DIA. And, that's about it.
I would also like to add to that, I believe they are still looking for election workers.
Yes, they are.
So
Yes, they
if
are.
there's anyone listening and watching us and you have the time and are available, I think the city would appreciate your service on Election Day as well.
I did have one other thing. I submitted an application. My seat on the Zoning Board of Appeals is over this year. Being the consummate overachiever, I sent in an application. If you could double back with the clerk to make sure that she got that, and if not, I'll resubmit it. But I've always enjoyed serving on a ZBA, and this is a particularly good group of people, and I'd be glad to come back.
Be glad to have you.
Yep. Okay.
I would just like to remind everybody that the March ZBA meeting will be held Wednesday, March 11th, due to the election. So,
Oh, that's right.
yes. I will make sure to send out reminders as we get a little closer with the packet, but.
Thank you for that reminder. Seeing as there is no one in the audience here, we will not open it up to have public comments. So at that point, I just need, if no one else has any comments or questions or things that they would like to discuss, we can adjourn the meeting. We just need a motion.
I'll move.
Support.
I'll move to adjourn.
Is it, and it was at 7:28, 28.
28.
Okay. I think I did it faster one time. But I happened to, I was like.